My name is Deasia Burrows, and I will be doing symptoms for the chickenpox virus. Shall we start? The classic symptom of chickenpox is a rash that turns into itchy, fluid-filled blisters that eventually turn into scabs. This is quickly followed, usually within 24 hours, by the development of a red rash, which usually appears on the chest or back first, later spreading to the face, scalp, arms, and legs. The itchy blister rash caused by chickenpox infection appears 10 to 21 days after exposure to the virus and usually lasts about 5 to 10 days. You may experience red or pink bumps all over your body. The bumps become blisters filled with fluid that leaks. Then the bumps become crusty, scab over, and begin to heal. Some more signs of chickenpox are fever, tiredness, loss of appetite, headache, fatigue, and a sore throat. BCV causes the chickenpox infection. Most cases occur through contact with an infected person. BCV remains contagious until all blisters have crusted over. The virus can spread through saliva, coughing, sneezing, and contact with the fluid from the blisters. Most cases of chickenpox are mild and go away on their own, but see your doctor right away if you develop any of the following symptoms. The rash spreads to one or both eyes. The rash gets very red, warm, or tender. Could have a bacterial skin infection. Dizziness, shortness of breath, vomiting, loss of muscle control, stiff neck, fever over 102, and dehydration.
Hi everybody, my name is UHD A, and I'm going to be walking you through the pathogenesis of chickenpox. So chickenpox is an airborne disease that is transmitted via inhalation of respiratory droplets or also through physical contact with the actual infectious skin lesions. And it's commonly spread through coughing and sneezing because these are just easy ways for disease to become airborne. So what first happens is that the virus infects the upper respiratory tract, and then primary viremia occurs about 4 to 6 days following the infection. So primary viremia basically is just the initial spread of the virus to the blood from the first infection, from the first site of infection. So with regards to chickenpox, primary viremia refers to the virus traveling from the upper respiratory tract to the blood. Then what happens there from the blood, the virus further replicates and the virus actually makes its way to the skin and also other organs like the mucous membrane, the liver, the spleen, the sensory ganglia. And this is referred to as secondary viremia. And secondary viremia just refers to the virus traveling from the blood to the subsequent organs. And so what happens once the secondary viremia occurs and the virus can spread to the skin is that pus-filled lesions actually start to form on the skin surface. And within 3 days, the fluid-filled lesions actually will dry up and they'll form scabs. And then after this, the T cells and the antibodies undergo their specific mechanisms to destroy the virally infected cells. And so the virus can then enter or can lie dormant in the dorsal root ganglia and the cranial nerve. And then if it's reactivated, this can cause shingles, a common disease in older adults. And so that's basically the overview of the pathogenesis of chickenpox. And so what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to walk you guys through these pictures here to the right. And so I can take you guys on a more detailed view of the chickenpox pathogenesis. And so you can also see how it relates to this reactivation of the disease known as shingles. And so if we look at this image here, if you just follow the arrows, you can see you're first looking at this VZV, and VZV just stands for varicella zoster virus. And varicella is chickenpox and zoster is shingles. And so they go hand in hand. And so what you see is that the VZV undergoes inoculation, which is just when the pathogen is introduced into the body. And so you can see the droplets going in, they're being breathed in, and then it will pass through the Waldeyer's ring. And this is just a ring of lymphoid tissue that will help to fight infection. And then you can see that the primary viremia actually occurs because the virus enters the blood. And so you can see the T cells here in this diagram. It's very specific. And the reason why T cells are mentioned is because these T cells actually help to deliver the virus to the site of replication. And so from the blood, the T cells help to spread the virus and go ahead and they infect the skin. And what also happens, as well as infecting the skin and the other organs, like the liver and the spleen, retrograde transport also occurs. And retrograde transport is basically just the process of molecules being shuttled away from the axon termini and towards the cell body of the neuron. And the reason why that's important is because this process of retrograde transport helps to interlink the chickenpox with the shingles, or the varicella with the zoster. And so the process that I just described to you right now is the varicella pathogenesis, or chickenpox. Now, if you look at the diagram, you can also see to the right, it says anterior grade transport. And this usually occurs later in life, and this is the shingles, like I mentioned before. But anterior grade transport is basically the exact opposite of retrograde transport, and it's the process of molecules being shuttled away from the cell body of the neuron and then towards the axon terminal. And so this will cause the skin infection to actually be reactivated in the form of a dermatome, and a dermatome is just an innervated area of skin. And so you can see what's happening here is that the chickenpox virus is being stored in the nervous system to later be reactivated. It's being stored via retrograde transport, and it's being reactivated via anterior grade transport. And so you can see the virus reactivates and in the form of a dermatome, and that is what actually causes the shingles virus to occur. And that's how the chickenpox and zoster virus, so the chickenpox and the shingles are actually linked. And so I'm going to take you through a quick description of basically now how the replication of the virus actually occurs cell to cell on a more micro level. So what you can see here is that you can see the VCV, or the varicella zoster virus particles, actually attaching to the cell membrane and infusing in. Then you can see the virus actually travels to the nuclear envelope and enters into the nucleus. Then you can see a whole cascade of genes are being produced. These genes, once they are produced, you can see these nucleocaplets go ahead and assemble these new genes to form this genomic DNA with the VZV in there. And then you can see that this new DNA moves from the nucleus, buds off and into the cytoplasm. It gets packaged by the Golgi apparatus, and then it gets sent out. This process will reoccur. And this is the process of replication. And that's just a basic overview of the pathogenesis of chickenpox. So now I'm going to talk to you guys just a bit about the research in chickenpox that I found that I thought was interesting. So one interesting thing that I thought that I found was that the American Academy of Pediatrics actually determined that chickenpox vaccinations can actually lower pediatric shingles. And so I thought this was pretty cool. Another interesting fact is that chickenpox is the only human herpes virus for which a vaccine was actually developed for. So I thought that was interesting. So I hope you guys learned a bit about the pathogenesis of chickenpox.
Hi, my name is Adriana. I focused on the treatments portion of this presentation. Before we get into the treatments though, I just wanted to add one thing to the research slide. There was no animal host for chickenpox. There is no animal host. So all evidence has been gathered through accumulated time in clinical observation of patients. So while we've known about chickenpox since ancient times, it did take until 1995 to create a vaccine, but that's because it had to be through observation. So speaking of since ancient times, I have a timeline that I created here to show the different kinds of treatments that were used to treat chickenpox over time. So in ancient times, especially in India, neem baths were a thing. It's just neem leaf and turmeric in a bath to soothe your skin so that the sores didn't itch so bad. The medieval era had a similar thing going when they discovered oatmeal had a good thing going for the skin that also soothed the sores. Pre-vaccine and actually same post-vaccine, but more commonly before the vaccine was made available, were pox parties. Young, healthy children were encouraged to socialize with children who had chickenpox so that they would be exposed and hopefully contract the disease to then build the antibodies at a younger age, because at this point they had discovered that young children responded better to the disease than adults did. They just had a higher get healthy rate. But in the 1990s, the vaccine was created and made available in 1995, but in the whole decade, 4 million people on average had chickenpox. 10,500 to 13,000 were hospitalized. And to put that in perspective, I looked up the numbers for COVID, and since COVID became a thing, sort of in Texas, 2.89 million COVID cases have shown up just within Texas. And in January of this year alone, 12,563 hospitalizations occurred. So comparatively, we see how this has affected our lives here in Texas and the changes we've had to make to prevent contracting a disease we didn't want, a viral illness we didn't want to get. And back before the vaccine was made available for chickenpox, what that would have been like in the 90s and before. So, I mean, if you don't remember the 90s, this is something to think about. The vaccine, though, was made available in 1995, and the recommendation was for 1-year-old babies to get a first dose of the vaccine, and that first dose alone was going to lower the risk of a severe form of chickenpox forming by 70 to 90%. And then in 2006, a recommendation was issued for a 5-year following the first dose booster shot to be given to children so that they could just further reduce that risk. In present day, by 2014, 91% of children between 19 and 35 months old received the vaccine. And according to CDC, because of that vaccination trend, 3.5 million cases of chickenpox and 9,000 hospitalizations are prevented each year thanks to vaccination. Just to reiterate, there is no cure for the chickenpox, but you can reduce discomfort. So pain meds are very commonly used to treat chickenpox, and topical treatments for itching, and mittens and socks are used to prevent scarring for when the itching happens. And prevention, just trying to form those antibodies before it becomes difficult for your body to form those antibodies. So childhood exposure and vaccine. Antiviral meds are also given to high-risk patients are listed right here. And thank you for listening to my presentation. I will hand it off now.
Hello, my name is Catherine Rodriguez, and today I'll be talking to y'all about the world of chickenpox, but mainly the prognosis of chickenpox. The prognosis of uncomplicated chickenpox is generally good when acquired in childhood and even in most adulthoods after the chickenpox rash goes away, which means is in childhood or even in adulthood that if you do get chickenpox, it will go away and not leave anything behind. However, it will leave some things behind. As you know, that the chickenpox rash is red dots all over your body. And I know as a child, I would pick at things. So the red rash all over your body will make your whole body irritating and itchy, and some kids or even some adults would tend to itch and scratch and mess with it in order to get a relief. However, if you do scratch to the point where you are able to bleed, it might leave some blisters
or noticeable scars on your skin if not treated. Most people never experience chickenpox symptoms after the first occurrence, and they are immune to other people's chickenpox. What that means is if you have chickenpox only one time, you are immune to getting chickenpox for the rest of your life and to other people who have chickenpox. But that isn't the case for everyone. But the good thing is the virus remains dormant in the nervous system. However, chickenpox can resurface later in life as shingles, which shingles is a stronger version of chickenpox. Thank you.